Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. And tonight, as we sometimes do, we're not going to start out with a person, but a place. And that place is Radio Shack, which died recently at the age of 94. Here's Brian Williams on NBC describing the bankruptcy filing of Radio Shack.
Radio Shack has been a part of retail life in America for a long time. Think about it. It's where you went for a computer back when people bought those early Tandy computers, but no more. They filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy today. They'll sell upwards of 2,400 stores. The growth in technology and easier ways to buy it ultimately killed the chain with radio in its name. They've been suffering losses for years.
Well, Radio Shack started out in Boston in 1921. It was a retail store and mail order operation that served the needs of radio officers aboard ships. It acquired a handful of stores in the Northeast as well as a successful electronics mail order business. In 1963, Charles Tandy and the Tandy Corporation from Houston acquired Radio Shack, marking the company's start as a personal electronics retailer. They opened the nation's first audio showroom in 1947, but their heyday was in the late 70s and in the 80s, when they introduced the first mass-produced personal computer, the TRS-80, in 1977. In 1986, they began offering mobile telephones, and with cell phones and computers, they were a really successful corporation at this time, expanding, storerooms always crowded. But this was the beginning of the end for them, because companies like Apple and Samsung developed their own products, and more importantly, their own outlets, and started cannibalizing Radio Shack's customers. On top of that, you got the growth of internet shopping during those years, and hey, Radio Shack is in bad shape at that point. Radio Shack turned to selling all sorts of electronic tchotchkes and repair, but they started losing their mojo at the turn of the century, and they were never able to regain it, and they were sort of reduced to selling batteries by the end. I still went in there because I'm one of the only guys left in America who buys transistor radios, and they used to sell them, so I don't know where I'm going to get them from now on. But we're going to say goodbye to Radio Shack once and for all. They had a good run, but like all good things, it came to an end. We're going to move on now to Charlie Sifford, who died recently at the age of 92. He was the Jackie Robinson of golf. He was the first black player on the professional tour. Unfortunately, golf was pretty much a white guy's game until the early 60s, so Charlie Sifford didn't join the tour until he was in his late 30s, early 40s, well past his golfing prime. And we never got to find out what he would do if he was able to play in his prime against guys like Ben Hogan and Sam Snead. I watched him play on television in the late 60s when he was on the tour, and the thing I loved about him was he always had a big cigar in his mouth. It was pretty much fun to watch him with that cigar. Here's ESPN and Rick Riley on Charlie Sifford.
They called Charlie Sifford the Jackie Robinson of golf. But what Sifford did was harder. He broke the color barrier without teammates and without Branch Rickey. He did it by himself and through more hazards than any golfer in history. He played through death threats, hecklers, and relentless harassment. Haters would pick up his ball in the fairway and throw it in the rough. He'd find his ball under trash. Once, he found human feces in the cup. But Sifford didn't just have black skin, he had thick skin. "I don't stay down," he once said, chomping his ever-present cigar. "I fight back." The man Tiger Woods called Grandpa was born in Charlotte, 1922. He was a caddy by age 10 and a pro by 17, but he had nowhere to go. The PGA Tour's Caucasians-only rule made sure of that. So Sifford was left to play the Negro Tour, winning the Negro Open 6 times, including 5 in a row. The Caucasians-only rule was changed in 1961, but by then, Sifford was 39. He'd been sidelined for the greatest years of his career. And yet, for the first 9 years on tour, he never finished out of the top 60 in money, despite not being able to stay in many of the player hotels or even eat in the clubhouses. Fellow tour pros like Bob Rosberg would bring him an extra plate, and they'd eat out back with the caddies. No wonder when Sifford, then 45 years old, won the 1967 Hartford Open, he wept. Most people thought it was a surefire invitation to the Masters, but that invitation never came, not even after he won the LA Open 2 years later. Angry, Sifford refused to set foot on the grounds of Augusta National the rest of his life, even after he was inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame in 2004. So light a cigar for Charlie Sifford, who changed the game of golf forever. Without Sifford, Earl Woods probably would have never taken up the game. Without Earl, Tiger Woods may have never learned it. Earl Woods once said, "Charlie Sifford took the punishment, the ridicule, and he still persevered. For that, He should always be remembered.
Yeah, 2 points there. First of all, the whole country's changing. In the early 60s, it's becoming more racially open, more racially tolerant. And here's the masters. They're still not letting black guys in 10 years later. The other thing is somebody's got to teach Rick Riley how to say the word. It's feces, not feces. Well, I want to close on that note for Joey Sifford because he was a hell of a golfer and a very, very tough guy. And he put up with a lot of stuff that he shouldn't have had to put up with. We're going to move on now to Karl Djerassi, who died recently at the age of 91. He was a nice Jewish boy from Vienna, and he had a huge role in changing American culture because he was one of the inventors of the birth control pill. The birth control pill wasn't invented by one person. It was invented by a number of chemists. But anyone who knows American history and culture knows that in the second half of the 20th century, there was probably no development that changed the role of women, and in that sense, the entire American society, more than the birth control pill. Here's Matthew Bannister from BBC4's Last Word on Karl Djerassi.
Karl Djerassi was the chemist known as the father of the contraceptive pill. He synthesized the compound which eventually led to a social and sexual revolution. But in his long career, he carried out many other research projects, founded biomedical companies, and as a professor at Stanford University in California, taught generations of students. He was also a novelist and playwright whose writing explored the moral dilemmas faced by scientists. Karl Djerassi was born in Vienna. He and his mother were among the many Jews who fled from the city as the Nazis arrived in 1938. Dr. Lara Marx is the author of A History of the Contraceptive Pill.
You could say that from early on, Djerassi was quite precocious. At the very tender age of 16, having arrived just as a refugee in America from Vienna, he wrote to Mrs. Roosevelt to see if he could get a scholarship to help him go to university.
Dear Mrs. Roosevelt, I need a room, board, and tuition fellowship in a college. And lo and behold, 3 months after I wrote, I got a postcard saying you've got one in a small college in Missouri.
After graduating, Karl went to work for the pharmaceutical company Ciba in New Jersey, where he developed the first antihistamines. Then, as his son Dale recalls, he was offered a job by a rival company based in Mexico.
Everything pointed to staying in New Jersey for the security of it, but he went to Mexico instead.
And if he hadn't gone to Mexico, he might never have done the work which led to the contraceptive pill.
Definitely.
So what was he doing in Mexico? He was working with yams, I believe.
They were collecting natural products, plant material all around Mexico, and looking for biologically active constituents in those plants.
We want to see whether we can make a synthetic compound that does not exist in nature, which, however, would have the same biological properties as a natural hormone, but be active by mouth. And that is what we accomplished. We then sent this material to many different biologists all over the world, including one named Gregory Pincus, who worked in Massachusetts, whose interest at that time was to try and work on the contraceptive applications of progestational compound.
When Djerassi helped develop one of the first compounds for the contraceptive pill, he had no idea what he was actually making. He thought he was making a compound that would be useful for helping women with menstrual disorders. But in fact, it was only later on that people began to realize that it had properties for a contraceptive. At the time that they synthesized the compound, there was a very heavy taboo around any research to do with sex and contraception. So much so that in the state of Massachusetts, there were fines of $1,000 for anyone participating in such research, and you could be imprisoned.
I don't think that he was campaigning as such for the bill, but when asked, he was very clear about his opinion. He definitely saw it as a force for good.
Yes, I'm proud. No, I don't have any regrets. Nothing is inevitable. We did our work in the 50s. We were chemists.
When the pioneers of the pill first began their work, they had no idea what they were getting into in terms of changing women's lives, and that includes Djerassi himself. Little did they imagine that single women without children would be taking the pill 20 years later. In fact, the pill, when it was first prescribed, was only given to married women with children already.
In fact, even 10, 11 years later, after we synthesized in 1951, and it was introduced in the market, neither the companies nor physicians nor I think they probably would expect it or realize how quickly that would be used.
I was very fortunate to meet Djerassi about 4 years ago when he was already in his late 80s. We met at a conference organised by women in Ottawa. It was interesting. Djerassi was quite provocative in his comments at that meeting and very forthright in saying that without the chemists, the pill could never have been developed. Equally, I would argue that the pill could not have been made without women who were willing to finance the project and push the project forwards.
Carl Djerassi, who's died aged 91.
Going to move on with some music now with Don Covay, who died recently at the age of 76. He's not that well known, but he was one hip guy. He was born in Orangeburg, South Carolina. He was the son of a Baptist minister. He moved to Washington, D.C., and he became a great soul singer, but he's even better known for his songwriting. He wrote and sang Pony Time, which became a #1 for Chubby Checker, but I don't like that one too much. And he wrote a dance record in the early 60s for Connie Francis, Mr. Twister, during the twist craze. But I'm going to play you 3 of Don Covay's biggest songwriting hits, including one for Aretha Franklin. Next to Respect, it's probably Aretha Franklin's greatest recording, in my opinion. A lot of people thought so. It's on Rolling Stone's list of the 500 greatest songs of all time at number 249. It reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 in 1967 and number 1 on the R&B. Aretha won a Grammy for it in 1969, and then later on in 2004 a Grammy Hall of Fame award for it. That's Joe South in the background playing the guitar licks. We've done a podcast on him. And this is Chain of Fools, written by Don Covay.
Chain, 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 chain of fools. For 500 years, I thought you were my man, but I'm just a link in the chain.
He wrote this one with Steve Cropper, one of those Stax dudes, and he recorded it in 1966, and the title has entered the vernacular, Sookie Sookie. Here's Don Covay's version. And you may be more familiar with this version. 2 years later, John Kay and Steppenwolf made it into a heavy metal classic in 1968. Finally, my favorite Don Covay record. He wrote and recorded this one in 1964, and he had Jimi Hendrix playing the guitar for him. Called Mercy Mercy, but I knew it as Have Mercy, and it was a minor hit.
Well, I went to see a gypsy and had my fortune read. She said, "Darn, your baby's gonna leave you. Her bag is packed up under the bed." I cried, "Have mercy. Have mercy, baby. Yeah. Have mercy. Have mercy on me."
You got all these people from Connie Francis to Steppenwolf doing his stuff, and in 1965, the Rolling Stones, in their white blues phase, picked up on Have Mercy.
I went to see a gypsy and had my fortune read. She said, "Your baby's gonna leave you now. Her bags are packed up under the bed." I said, "Have mercy. Have mercy, baby. Have mercy. Have mercy on me."
Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. And we're going to close with Aldo Ciccolini, the great classical pianist who died at the age of 89. He specialized in the works of Liszt and especially Eric Satie. And I'm going to close with the famous Satie composition that we played at our wedding all those years ago. This is for you, dear. This is Aldo Ciccolini playing a little bit of Satie's Gin No PD.